Is Brazil trapped in an unending cycle of underdevelopment and stagnation? Let's delve into this thought-provoking question. Brazil, with its vibrant culture and vast natural resources, has long been considered a country with tremendous potential. However, despite these advantages, it remains a developing nation, seemingly stuck in a cycle of stagnation. This isn't due to a lack of resources or potential, but rather an amalgamation of societal and institutional issues that stifle its growth. The first of these issues is a pervasive lack of critical thinking. A significant portion of the population seems to lack the ability, or perhaps the will, to critically analyze and respond to the issues that affect them. This deficit in critical thinking leads to an acceptance of the status quo, a complacency that hampers any potential progress. Next, we have the corrupt media. In Brazil, media outlets often serve as mouthpieces for the powerful, spreading misinformation and pushing agendas that serve their interests. This biased media landscape makes it exceedingly difficult for the average Brazilian to access objective, reliable information, further exacerbating the lack of critical thinking. The judicial system in Brazil is another factor that contributes to the country's stagnation. It's often seen as biased, with justice seeming to bend in favor of the powerful and wealthy. This perceived corruption erodes public trust and discourages active participation in societal and political matters. But perhaps the most significant issue is the general unwillingness of the majority to do more than the bare minimum. This is not to say that Brazilians are inherently lazy or unambitious. Rather, it seems that many have resigned themselves to the idea that their efforts will not bring about meaningful change, leading to a sense of apathy and inaction. These are the issues we'll be discussing in this video, but to fully understand them, we need to delve deeper. We need to understand the root causes and the implications of these issues, and how they contribute to Brazil's seemingly unending cycle of stagnation. To understand why Brazil seems to be stuck in this cycle, we need to take a closer look at the factors that contribute to its stagnation. First, let's consider the intellectual capacity of the Brazilian population. Is it living up to its potential? Well, the answer is, unfortunately, a resounding no. It's not about the lack of potential, but rather a question of the utilization of that capacity. Ponder on this. Brazil, a country with a population of over 200 million people, has a staggering illiteracy rate. Almost 8% of the population above the age of 15 can't read or write. That's a significant chunk of the population that is unable to contribute effectively to the nation's growth. Now let's delve a bit deeper. It's not just about literacy, is it? Education is not merely reading and writing, it's about critical thinking, problem solving, and innovation. Unfortunately, these aspects of education are sorely lacking. The education system in Brazil is more focused on rote learning, rather than fostering creativity and critical thinking. According to the Program for International Student Assessment, Brazilian students score significantly lower than the average when it comes to problem-solving skills. This lack of critical thinking has wider implications. It leads to apathy, a crippling indifference towards the state of affairs. Without the ability to think critically, individuals are less likely to question the status quo or strive for change. This apathy is palpable in Brazil. People are so caught up in the struggle for survival that they have little energy or inclination to fight for a better future. What we have then is a vicious cycle. The lack of quality education leads to a lack of critical thinking, which in turn leads to apathy. This apathy then perpetuates the poor state of education, and the cycle continues, hindering Brazil's progress towards becoming a developed, modern, and civilized country. In conclusion, the intellectual capacity of the Brazilian population is not being utilized to its full potential. The lack of critical thinking and general apathy among the population are significant roadblocks to Brazil's development. This is a crisis that needs to be addressed if Brazil is to break free from this unending cycle. Next, let's talk about the media. How does it contribute to Brazil's stagnation? You see, the media holds an immense power in shaping public opinion and policy. It's the lens through which we view the world, the narrator of our collective story. But what happens when this lens is distorted, when the narrator is biased? Let's take a peek into Brazil's media landscape, shall we? In Brazil, a handful of families control most of the media outlets. This might seem like an innocuous fact until you realize that this gives them an undue influence over the narrative, allowing them to mold public opinion to serve their interests. They can, and often do, present a skewed version of reality, downplaying issues that might harm their interests, while highlighting those that serve their agendas. Take, for instance, the way they report on corruption. High-profile corruption cases involving politicians they favor are often downplayed, while those involving their adversaries are blown out of proportion. This selective reporting not only misleads the public, but also perpetuates a culture of corruption by creating a perception that only certain individuals or parties are corrupt. Moreover, these media moguls often have cozy relationships with political elites, leading to a quid pro quo situation. Politicians receive positive coverage, and in return they ensure policies favorable to these media houses. This unholy alliance stifles critical journalism, curbs media freedom, and ultimately impedes Brazil's development. And let's not forget about the sensationalism. The Brazilian media is notorious for its sensationalist reporting, focusing on crime, violence, and scandal over substantive issues. This not only distracts the public from pressing issues but also fosters a culture of fear and negativity, hindering constructive discourse and problem-solving. So, what we have here is a media that's more interested in serving its interests than informing the public, more inclined towards sensationalism than substantive reporting, more invested in maintaining the status quo than fostering change. The corrupt and biased media is another major obstacle to Brazil's development. Its role in shaping public opinion, policy, and the national narrative is pivotal, and until it decides to put the nation before its interests, Brazil will continue to spin its wheels, forever stuck in its cycle of stagnation. Now let's turn our attention to the judicial system. Is it doing its job? Picture this, a system that should be the pillar of justice, the guardian of the law, and the balancer of societal scales. Yet, in Brazil, it seems to be stuck in a quagmire of corruption and bias. Let's dive into this a little deeper. According to Transparency International, Brazil ranks 99th out of 180 countries in the Corruption Perceptions Index. This isn't a race where you want to be leading from the back, but here we are. This corruption isn't just a stain on the country's reputation. It seeps into the very marrow of the judicial system, distorting judgments and skewing the scales of justice. Bias is another beast that's taken root in the judicial system. It's not uncommon to see cases where the wealthy and powerful are treated with kid gloves, while the underprivileged bear the brunt of the law. This disparity creates a chasm between the haves and the have-nots, further cementing the social and economic divide in the country. But how does this affect Brazil's ability to develop and modernize? Well, a flawed judicial system breeds mistrust. It erodes public faith in institutions and hampers the establishment of a robust civil society. This mistrust then translates into a lack of investment, both local and foreign, as businesses shy away from a system where the rules can be bent by a few well-placed individuals. Moreover, the lack of effective punishment for corruption encourages a culture of impunity, where those with power feel invincible. This not only stymies progress but also further entrenches the status quo. So the judicial system, which should be the backbone of a just and fair society, becomes a stumbling block. It's like trying to run a marathon with a sprained ankle. You might make some progress, but you'll never reach your full potential. The broken judicial system is yet another factor that keeps Brazil from developing. And until this system is fixed, Brazil remains a country of unfulfilled promises and missed opportunities. Finally, let's look at the people of Brazil. Are they doing enough to push their country forward? The answer, sadly, is a resounding no. The Brazilian people, the majority, seem to be caught in a relentless loop of doing just the bare minimum. This isn't a sweeping generalization, but a hard-hitting reality. Let's take a look at some numbers. In a recent survey, a staggering 75% of Brazilians admitted to doing the least amount of work possible, just enough to get by. This mentality isn't just limited to the workplace. It permeates every aspect of their lives, from civic duties to personal growth and development. Then there are the crime statistics. In Brazil, leniency towards crime is a norm rather than an exception. This leniency is a direct result of the lack of willingness to enforce the law, to take a stand against wrongdoings. This lax attitude has allowed crime to flourish, hindering any chance of development or modernization. The repercussions of this unwillingness are far-reaching. It's not just about the lack of progress, it's about the stagnation. A nation that doesn't strive to improve, to grow, is a nation that's destined to remain stuck in the past. And that's the crux of the matter. The unwillingness of the majority of Brazilians to do anything more than the bare minimum is a crippling handicap. It's not just about the government or the system, it's about the people, their mindset, and their unwillingness to change. The unwillingness of the majority to do more than the bare minimum is the final piece in the puzzle that explains why Brazil is stuck in a cycle of underdevelopment. So, what does the future hold for Brazil? Let's take a moment to ponder that question. We've gone from the unending cycle of complacency, the brain drain and public apathy, through the twisted labyrinth of a corrupt media, to the shattered remnants of a broken judicial system, and finally to the unwilling majority, those who'd rather do the bare minimum than strive for a better future. In light of these realities, Brazil's future appears to be stagnating, frozen in a cycle of underdevelopment. It's not a pretty picture, is it? Imagine a nation blessed with an abundance of resources, a vibrant culture, and a spirited people, yet held back by its own shortcomings. That's Brazil for you. The lack of critical thinking among its populace remains a significant hurdle. It's not just about questioning the excessive taxation or the lax attitude towards crime. It's about understanding the implications of these issues on the nation's progress. The constant spinning of wheels without any real movement forward is a symptom of a society that refuses to confront its problems. The media, with its deep-rooted corruption, continues to manipulate narratives, shaping public opinion to serve its interests. This twisted dance between the media and the public reinforces the existing issues, creating a vicious cycle that seems almost impossible to break. Meanwhile, the judicial system, biased and broken, fails to uphold the principles of justice. The scales are tipped, serving only those with power and influence, while the ordinary Brazilian is left to fend for themselves. And then we have the vast majority, those who are content with the status quo, those who'd rather survive than thrive. This unwillingness to go beyond the bare minimum is a silent killer, slowly but surely undermining the nation's potential to grow. Until these issues are addressed, Brazil will remain stuck in its cycle of underdevelopment, never reaching its potential as a developed, modern, and civilized nation.